Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It's Wednesday, May 10th, and today we're coming to you live from the BMI Global Scholarship Forum in London, England. So giving me a chance to return to the land of my birth and a place where I got to spend first 2.5 years of my marriage growing up as an adult. But certainly some fond memories here, but it's great reconnecting. Having my wife and son over with me has been a real treat, but today was all about business. And this event, the BMI Global Scholarship Forum, brings together U.S. and other university representatives from around the world, actually 45 different countries, that make up the participants in the forum, both universities as well as scholarship agencies, both governmental, not-for-profit, foundations, quasi-governmental organizations. So this event is a seventh annual event, always here in London as a global summit. BMI also does two of these in regions around the world. First in South America for the Latin American region, typically in Colombia. It's coming up, I think, in October or September, and then again in the Middle East, in the Gulf typically. So what we do at this event, 2 days of meetings, and in the meetings we have basically, it's not speed dating, but these are scholarship agencies and having various levels and numbers and amounts of scholarship that they give each year. And typically with the group that we have assembled here, and I'll just do a quick pan round so you can see the entire room. There's a room with 63 tables for the scholarship agencies that are the main folks that are sitting at the tables, and then we have a number of universities that, as I mentioned, from about 47 university representatives from the U.S., Canada, the UK, obviously. There's a couple Australian institution representatives here, and some other universities, Hong Kong, a couple others that are present for the event. So the conversations range anything from finding out about each other's organizations, talking about our main academic programs on the institutional side, what current scholarships you have. So for some of these organizations, particularly the ones from Latin America that are here, Futuro, some foundations from different countries in Mexico, some private associations that are specific in, for example, Juventud SGTO, which I find out is specifically for the youth of Guanajuato in Mexico. It's a state-sponsored association or foundation to fund study abroad for citizens of that state, Guanajuato. So we've got folks that are from ministries of education, different variations on that theme, Ministry of Education, Culture, Sport, and Science in some countries. Had opportunities here to meet with folks from the embassy, or not the embassy, the Ministry of Education, Higher Education in Iraq, scientific research. They are doing something quite unique, a new scholarship program coming out that is more of a capacity development, faculty capacity development for universities in Iraq. They have a number of doctoral programs that they're seeking, and they're asking various representatives that they've had meetings with to see if they'd be interested in this and receiving these applicants, or these basically current faculty members at Iraqi universities to come over to do doctoral programs and build capacity for their nation and their institutions. So they are hosting an event in December in Iraq at the American University of Baghdad, and they will be having this event somewhere in the middle of December, and those institutions that will be participating in this be asked to come and sign agreements at this event in Baghdad. So who knows if that might be a trip into everybody's future. Clearance and safety concerns obviously being answered as part of that. So a lot of exciting opportunities down the road with the results of this. And to be very honest, this is an event I've heard about for the last few years, but this is the first year that I've ever felt like I really need to be at this event. And we know, for those of us who've been in the business more than a minute, there have been periods in the last 20 years where a lot of our campuses have been not inundated, but certainly seen their fair share of sponsored students. It might have been Saudi wave that started in the mid-noughties that lasted until 2015 or 16 or so. There's a new mini wave coming from Saudi Arabia, but not nearly the numbers that used to be there. We saw almost at the same time the Brazilian scientific mobility students coming. They were generally coming for a year of English and some non-degree work, but certainly there were large numbers coming from them when Brazil made it into the top five of countries sending students to the United States at one point. But you see what these opportunities mean for us as university representatives that are always asked to bring in more students, and they're always asked to bring in more full pay students. And not all of the students that would come from these sponsoring organizations will be full pay, because some of them, particularly Latin American ones, where they're based, their funding model is based on loans that start as loans, but can be potentially converted to scholarships if they decide to return to their country and serve in the public service. Can get those loans converted into scholarships, so they don't have to repay them if they meet certain conditions. So there's some interesting opportunities out here, and again, it's not a cheap event to be a part of. It was $6,000 registration, but you're getting access in one room for 2 days, 65 different scholarship agencies from around the world in one place. Agencies that could, one or two agreements signed here are, as a result of these meetings, could lead to dozens of students or more, depending on which program we're talking about here. But certainly if you're looking at diversifying where your students are coming from, this kind of event can certainly allow you to achieve some of that, particularly if you have flexibility in the scholarships that you have at your institution, your ability, if you're a state institution, to potentially waive out-of-state tuition fees for a certain number of applicants from a certain agency or scholarship group. So there's a lot of opportunity here. If you get creative and you have flexibility in terms of what you can do with your scholarships made that you have institutionally, you may be, even if you're not a named school, because there are a number of agencies here that you have to be on certain approved lists, and we all know who those are. Many of them don't show up to this just because they don't want to have meetings, a lot of meetings with institutions that aren't going to be on their list and never will. But the ones that generally show up here are open to it. And some of them, I know we're not on their list, but I wanted to have a conversation with how do I get on their list. And some of them have very obscure ways of doing it. Some you have to jump through a lot of hoops. Some won't start that process unless there's a student who wants to apply to you. So it's always a little bit strange, cart before the horse kind of mentality, but certainly that is an option that is a reality that we want to, that many of these organizations will need to use as they consider who they're going to allow their applicants, scholarship students, to go to. And certainly there's the need for quality control, and we can all talk about that every day, all day. But in terms of some of these organizations are really just new to the sponsored student game and are really understanding that institutions that come to this generally they're accredited, they're fully recognized, they're in the right ballpark in terms of who they are and what they represent. So typically that's not kind of problems, but some who report back to senior leaders in their countries that have to justify why they work with certain partners and not others. So very interesting thoughts going on here, and certainly a lot of different formats that agreements can take place in. Many of the agencies will have their own MOUs that they want us to work with. Some are more flexible and will let us kind of use our template as we move forward in any potential agreements. So I think a lot of us here today are finding, in terms of people that are coming new to this event, are finding this to be one of the more productive uses of our 2 days of our time. And certainly I would be in that category. There's just so many opportunities down the pipe that want to follow up, and in the end, events like this live or die by how well and how quickly and how thoroughly you follow up. Because I met with 20 plus, close to 30 people after one-on-ones outside of the individual scheduled times. So my success here and my willingness and ability to come back next week or next year is going to be dependent on how some of these agreements turn out. So, and whether there's it's all talk or if there's some action behind it. So this is what our goal will be in the coming weeks and months as we work towards some of these future conferences. Here I also had the opportunity to, because of our focus at UNLV is on expanding our relationships in Latin America. There's a number of Latin American and Caribbean foundations and quasi-governmental groups here in attending that I had a chance to speak with and also promote the CAE conference and encourage them to come and visit campus in Las Vegas. That event, the CAE conference, and for my U.S. colleagues too, be at that conference. You're missing out if you don't go. This is something that we really look forward to, being a host for this event. The first time the CAE will be in the United States. We're going to be hosting this November in Las Vegas. So it's an important time for our institution, kind of what I'm calling to our friends, our coming out party to Latin America, to the region and to the Americas in terms of our desire to expand partnerships across the Americas and encourage, as I've been speaking with these agencies today, more of them to participate in that event because they'll be connecting with universities throughout the Americas, Canada to Chile, and everywhere in between. So it's to everyone's advantage if we can really expand the participants at that event in November in Las Vegas, November 6th, 7th, and 8th. If you'd like to find out more about that, please let me know. But for now, that's all we have for you, and wanted to share just the excitement in this room. Frankly, very, very productive conversations and some things I certainly wasn't expecting to hear from some of the groups I met with, and in terms of what they allow, what they don't allow, what they're how you get on the list and that type of thing. But certainly, it's an event I'll be back at, and I had a chance to speak with Samir Zaveri, who's the CEO of BMI, and BMI and you might know Times Higher Ed have recently joined forces and adding weight to who they can bring to the table for these kind of events. So it's quite a consummation, but conflagration. No, not conflagration. It's quite a unique arrangement between those two organizations, and certainly one that I think BMI obviously has huge presence in the physical fair world and has been in that space for a number of years. If you haven't heard Samir's edition of Destiny Benders with Girish and Jessica, I definitely recommend you checking that one out. That was a really great episode, learning about his story, learning about how he came to lead BMI and the different paths that the company's gone down over the last few years. So certainly recommend checking it out, and certainly happy to share my thoughts privately if you have any. If you'd like to hear that feedback about this event and what the potential is down the road. So that's all for me for now. I wish you the very best, and we look forward to chatting with you soon. Cheers.